In this tutorial we're going to be looking at what we call arrays, or in Python, lists. Anyway, in order to understand arrays and lists, you need to actually understand the reason why we have them. Now, on the screen, as you can see, I've got some code, and what this code is representing is test scores of a few students. Okay, so I've got 10 students starting at 0, going all the way to 9, and I've created a variable to store each of their scores. So as you can see, the scores are a bit different, and I might want to do some stuff with it. For example, I might want to work out the average. Now, to work the average out, I would probably have to do something like this. So maybe get the total first. So I need to add up all these numbers. So it'd be score 0 plus score 1 plus score 2, and you get the idea. Now, because I'm doing the same thing over and over again, I'm just adding up numbers, and it makes sense to use a loop, because that's what they're there for. Loops are there to repeat code. But the problem is, how on earth could you write a loop when they're all different? The truth is, you can't. So straight away, I've got a problem. This is not a very good way of doing it. Also, what actually would happen if I didn't have 10 students in my class? What happens if I had, I don't know, let's say 100. What if it was a test which was being given to everybody in school? That'd be over 1,000. The simple truth of the matter is that computers are very good at storing large amounts of data. But if we use a single variable for every single bit of data we are storing on the computer, that would end up being a lot. So that's not the great way to do it. There is another way of doing it, and that's using an array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the same information in the array, and then we're going to explain what they actually are. So I'm going to write my array underneath, and because this is going to be storing scores, I'm going to call it scores. Arrays start with the little square bracket, and then all I do is put the numbers in, like this. As you can see, I've now stored all those numbers into a single variable. Now, at the moment I haven't explained how it's working or what it does yet, I've just done it. So let's actually look into how arrays work. At the moment I've got a single variable with a value in it, and I've represented it as a box to show that actually this is a box somewhere in memory. So somewhere in memory I have the value of 40, and score is my kind of link to it. It's my way of getting into it and actually do something with it. Now, if I was going to store more of them, I would simply add a variable for each one. So I've got a box for every single number, and then obviously I can access it later. So I've still got my link, which is the name of the variable. But as we already looked at, this is not a great way of doing it, because I'd have to have a variable for each one, and that just makes my code a lot longer, a lot more complicated. So we can use an array to represent them instead. An array looks very similar to a table with 2 rows and lots of columns. So across the top we have the index, and this is the position in the array that the number will come. So the first score is stored in index 0, the second score is stored in index 1, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing that is a little bit confusing initially is, why does it start with 0? Well, it just does. A lot of languages start with 0, some start with 1, but most tend to start with 0. If I want to access the first test score, I simply use the name of the array, and then just specify the index of 0. If I want to access the fourth item, I would then give it the name of the array again, and then just say position 4 please. Okay, so you have to know the name of the array and the position of the value you're interested in. Now, something magic happens when you actually do it this way, is that actually it's very easy to iterate over it, or for example loop. So I can start at position 0, I can go to 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and I can do stuff with it. For example, print it out, add them all up, and calculate an average. So arrays allow us to go over large amounts of data very easily. So let's actually consider how to use the array we've just created. So I'm going to get rid of my original scores because I've now stored my array. And let's say all I want to do is print them out. Well, I could go like this. Print scores 0. I'm just going to do a bit of copy and pasting just to speed things up a bit, and I'm just going to put those in like this: 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and if I run that, you should see it prints out the test scores one after another. Now, hopefully, you should be able to see a very clear pattern. And you can see this number is going up 1 each time. Well, that now is in a position where I can actually manipulate it in a loop. So let's actually look at the same code in a loop. So remember, a loop must always have a starting point. And then I can say, well, scores, while x is less than 8, or equal to 8, sorry, print scores x equals x plus 1. I'm going to make this look a bit more obvious to you guys and say something along the lines of this. I can go index of array is x, and then say which has score x. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out slightly a little bit on that so you can actually see a bit more. So you can see here it's saying index of array is x, which has score x. Okay, let's run it. Let's see what it looks like. You can see here's the index of array is 0, which has score 40. Index of array 1, and so on and so forth. So you can see that actually using a loop, we can go over this array really easily. I'm going to show you a better way of doing it. Now, I've actually put a value in there, but actually there's a better way of doing it, and doing it this way. You get very used to writing loops like this, because when you have an array, you are always, or 9 times out of 10, going to have a loop. So this little bit of code here, ignore the print line on line 14, but this bit of code here you are going to be repeating over and over again. I call this a code pattern. Now, code patterns are really important, because once you learn them and you can recognize when you need them, actually programming becomes so much easier. So I'm going to stop with this tutorial because I've really just introduced the idea of a loop, and I've actually shown you how to actually get some code started. What we're going to look at next time is actually how to manipulate arrays in a bit more detail, and also how to actually do something useful with them. At the moment, we're not really doing anything useful, but hopefully you can see that actually now my code has become much shorter, much more manageable, just by simply using an array instead of loads of different variables. And it doesn't matter how big I make my array. If I make it much bigger, it will still work exactly the same way without me having to do any other code, which is great.